So, hello, welcome back to another episode of the Self-Development with Tactics podcast. Today we're going to go ahead with Design Your Work by Tiago Forte, a really amazing, tremendously amazing book around designing your work. Guess what? Productivity and, well, I would say not only productivity, but also just a bit philosophical. You know, he's also a bit philosophical about life, about things, about whatever it may be, and we're going to go ahead with it. And gratitude, and him talking about tracking gratitude, as far as I have seen, as I've opened the tab and looked for where I have left yesterday. Does this make sense? No, it doesn't. But anyway, what I learned in 7 years of tracking gratitude. I wondered, what if I could predict what will make me happy in the future by looking at what has made me happy, what has made me happiest in the past? Which does make sense. I think it is a good idea, but, big but. It is always like, just because something did this and that and these and those in the past, does this also mean that this and that and these and those is going to happen in the future as well? You know, can you really predict certain things in general? But when it comes to yourself, when it comes to your feelings, when it comes to you and your being, I think it makes sense, you know? I think it really does. So track your gratitude. Maybe you should also start to do so. Maybe I should start to do so. Who the fuck knows? We're gonna see. Productivity for precious snowflakes. But my favorite one comes from Josh Waitzkin, The Art of Learning, and he was, not covered, but he was featured on various episodes of the Tim Ferriss podcast. He is a very interesting guy. He's all about learning, trying to learn everything. He is, I guess, a BJJ black belt. So one of the first black belts, as far as I remember. There was something about his black belt hood that was so astonishing. But also chess grandmaster or something. He is very accomplished in many fields, just because he was able to learn learning, so meta learning. He was able to really make it a craft and, well, learn learning very well. In performance training, first we learn to flow with whatever comes. Then we learn to use whatever comes to our advantage. Finally, we learn to be completely self-sufficient and create our own earthquakes, so our mental process feeds itself explosive inspirations without the need for outside stimulus. Instead of making a mini outline of each book and article and podcast you consume, trying to preserve the logical structure of the argument, just wait in low power mode for reactions like surprise, delight, intrigue, and outrage. Trying to preserve the logical structure of the argument. It makes sense. What I was thinking about, when it is a book about information or around information, or a book with a lot of information, maybe a goal might be not to preserve this information, but thinking about where this information is coming from and how this person got to this information. You know, what is the structure behind it? And I assume when one gets that, you know, where this information is coming from, how this person was able to get there, one could emulate that, and one could use this process and this structure to do this as well. Of course, if this is applicable to your field and what you want to apply to is a completely different story, completely different thing, but maybe you're able to do so. Who knows? Who says you're not going to be able to? Emergent productivity, a people-centered approach to work. The purpose of companies is to build a culture that supports their people. The job of employees is to use that culture as a platform to perform their work as productively and creatively as possible. The purpose of the work is to serve as a vehicle for learning and personal growth for each employee, however they define it. In other words, having a kid counts just as much as learning as new skills. What? In other words, having a kid counts just as much as learning a new skill. This is why maternity/paternity leave and related policies are just as important as productivity initiatives. They tie together the messages that work is about holistic growth. The purpose of leaders is to preserve and refine this alignment, to help people align with their work and the company to align with its people. Notice the order there. First, you help people identify their goals, then you identify the company's goals. Finally, you help everyone manage the gaps and leverage the overlaps. I don't want to I do want to repeat it again. First, you help people identify their goals. Then you identify the company's goals. Finally, you help everyone manage the gaps and leverage the overlaps. It's no fucking other way around or something. It's this way and this way only. The holy grail of self-improvement. I call this theory Neo-Pavlovian behaviorism. Okay. NPB. Reminds me of NLP. Neuro-linguistic programming, I guess, as far as I remember. A throwback to Pavlov and mechanisms. And his leviating dogs, I guess. We're back to setting up simple one-way triggering mechanisms, linking cues and rewards to cut out all the stuff in between. You know the human? This era has reached its peak with the launch of the Pavlok self-shocking bracelet, which it promises to shock you out of bad habits and into good ones. Which makes sense if you're thinking about it. When there is a reason not to engage in a bad habit, you're probably also not going to do so. Yes, and it is a very extreme way, but maybe also a good way, but I do not really want to recommend it since it's a bit off, I'd say. Yeah, a tiny bit off, so maybe not. Maybe just not doing this. A traveling exhibition called Disney and Dali. Dali being Salvador Dali, the artist, architects of the imagination, unapologetically traces Freud's influence on Dali's art and Dali's influence and collaboration with Walt Disney, of which the film Fantasia is the most obvious product. Freud, since he's Austrian, therefore I can pronounce it Germanish, sets the stage of the subconscious mind. Dali provided the fantastic imagery, and Disney figured out monetization and distribution. This gives new meaning to the Disneyfication of society at large. Period. Well, amazing. A more useful metaphor is bicep curls. Every time your mind wanders, the act of bringing attention back to the breath is a repetition, strengthening the muscle of focus. This allows you to greet the inevitable with the sense of progress. Just as you need gravity to build muscle, you need a distraction to build focus. As well as you need dark to see the light and have the light to see the dark. It is actually a fucked up thing, to really be honest. I need bad to have good. Everything is out of contrast. Everything is contrast. But the problem is I don't want to have bad. But maybe bad doesn't have to be quote unquote bad. Maybe it is just not as good. If I'm having a really fucking good day, and maybe one day I'm not gonna have such an amazing good day. What this means is this day shouldn't necessarily crush me. I shouldn't be fucked up because of that day and whatnot. Maybe this day is just not as good as the previous one. So that I can see that the previous one is actually pretty fucking amazing, or was pretty fucking amazing. Or consider the ego depletion versus non-depletion debate, which has recently been in the news. Voluminous research has shown that willpower is like a muscle. Using it too much makes it tired, leading to poor performance and poor choices. Equally, voluminous research indicates that willpower is unlimited, or actually increases with use, or depends on your beliefs about the nature of willpower. But my favorite model is that willpower is a story. People do what they enjoy and then narrativize it as self-discipline after the fact. willpower is a story. Other studies have found that the most important factor in selecting athletic footwear is comfort, and a major reason interval training is more effective is that it is simply more enjoyable. I think it really does play a big role. If something is fun for you, you're probably going to do it more. Therefore, it is important. The most durable habits are inherently rewarding, a quality that tends to arise because they are difficult or challenging, not despite it. Think puzzles. McGonigal cites studies showing that you can annihilate, the entire dopamine system in a rat's brain, and it will still get a goofy grin on its face if you feed it sugar. What it won't do is work for the treat. It likes the sugar, it just doesn't want it before it has it. I call this curiosity arbitrage. How many different ways can you discover to be curious about something? Reminds me of cultural studies. Essentially trying to see things in various different lights. Also sometimes certain lights that no one else tries to use. Which is very interesting. You can get pretty great points of views and very interesting ones as well by doing so. I can't even understand an already existing emergent pattern by analyzing its components, because it is more than the sum of its parts. Disassembling the parts will not reveal the essence, the quote-unquote more. Thus, the pointlessness of all the books and the websites chronicling the habits of successful people in tedious detail. Success is an emergent pattern of emergent patterns, even more resistant to imitation. Across dozens of studies on behavior change interventions, researchers have found that the conscious mind's sincere, concerted intention to change behavior has little relationship to actual change in behavior. It is this grim. Disturbance propagating describes one way that emergent systems can change by using an external disturbance as the seed of a new pattern, and propagating this new pattern across the rest of the system is in a cascading sequence. As any product designer will tell you, your main competition is not other new product, it is the status quo. The study reported that 36% of successful changes in behavior were associated with a move to a new place. Sometimes we do things just because we are at a certain place, and then we can change things when we change places. Often also smokers smoke at the exact same time, maybe the exact same place, and maybe when you're not at this place, maybe you're not even going to smoke. Maybe it's going to feel a bit off, maybe you're going to think about it more. As far as I remember, James Clear wrote about that also on his blog. There is even evidence that emergent systems need chaos in order to form stable patterns. Habits seem to be little bubbles of structure in the midst of our chaotic lives. Thus, many habits formation theories emphasize controlling the environment and reducing variability in a bid to help these bubbles survive. Think of the whirlpool in the bathtub. No one designed it, and it doesn't require any extra energy to be maintained. If you disturb it, it gravitates naturally back to its previous form. This describes the ideal habit. It saves your energy not by preserving some conserved quantity of willpower, but by sucking this orderliness from the environment into a stable structure. The more chaos, the more order is created, like a crystalline diamond being formed under intense heat and pressure. The main reason is that most people's risk tolerance is very low, because self-efficiency, defined as a person's conviction or confidence about his or her abilities to mobilize the motivation, cognitive resources, or courses of action needed to successfully execute a specific task within a given context, is remarkably fragile. The primary risk of entrepreneurship and other free agent lifestyles is not financial or even social. It is the risk to a person's very self-concept as someone who does what they set out to do. Stripped of risk mitigating social structures, we are faced with the terror of total accountability. The correlation between individualism and suicide rates in development countries speaks to the risk of this sort of attribution. Mitigating social structures. Terror of total accountability. Take the example of health. This 2012 AON Healthcare Survey reports that 80% of healthcare costs are accounted for by 15 conditions, which are driven by just 8 risks that are at least partly behavior dependent. So poor diet, physical inactivity, smoking, lack of health screening, poor stress management, poor standard of care, insufficient sleep, excessive alcohol consumption. Maybe one could also say like the 80-20 rule is applicable to that. 20% of conditions make up 80% of well, maybe not really the case. I mean, 15 conditions, there probably are hundreds and thousands of conditions, therefore it must not be or should not be 20%. But anyway, very interesting part, a little bit fragmented, a bit too fragmented for my taste, but anyway, gonna see you the next time. I at least hope. But up until then, have a good day. Bye bye. Take care.